Welcome to another Career in the Classroom event. I'm Heather Wetzler, and I'm the co-founder of Q Career. Q Career helps students explore careers and links them to valuable resources such as apprenticeships and scholarships. Today's event is hosted in conjunction with the Association of Woodworking and Furnishings Suppliers. On today's panel, we'll include Whitney, who is the co-owner and COO of G.J. Brower's Advanced Cabinet Systems, and Saul, who is the VP of Operations at Architectural Woodworking Company. Thank you for joining us. So Saul, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and say where you work and what you do, and then we'll ask you some questions.
Great. So my name is Saul Martin, better known as Larry around the shop. I work for Architectural Woodworking Company here in the greater Los Angeles area. I've been here with Architectural for 26 years, started off as an apprentice, and before that I took a high school wood shop and some wood shop at LA Trade Tech, the local college that we have here. After that, I was hired on by Architectural and joined the apprenticeship program, did my 3.5 years. They gave me some credit for the college time I spent, and I became a journeyman. Along with that, I've spent numerous semesters taking other classes, whether it be lean manufacturing, AutoCAD, Excel, just different types of courses that has helped me advance in my career. And I do a little bit of everything here, whether it be unloading trucks or writing programs for the CNC router, assembling. I come in sometimes at 6 in the morning and leave at 6 at night. So it's pretty nice to have the keys to the shop. I can do anything I want.
That's great. Well, what's some advice that you would give to students looking to break into this industry? You know, specifically if we're looking at 17 and 18-year-olds, right? I mean, I guess some of the questions that they have is, do they need to go to a 4-year school? Are there apprenticeships available? And how do they go about finding an apprenticeship? And are those paid?
Yes, so apprenticeships are paid. You basically, the best thing to do if you're in high school taking woodshop class is try to get together with your professor or your teacher to kind of lead you in the right direction as to who you should talk to. Find the local, like in our case here in Los Angeles, local 721 Cabinet Makers in Millman. It's the local union here. You could go there and they will give you a listing of all the potential employers that are out there. When you do go and apply, make sure that you put on what you've done, machinery that you've used. That's what I look for, specific to our trade. You could say that you use a table saw, but if you tell me that you use an Oldendorf table saw, then hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. So look for the local where they will give you a list, and then when you do get hired on, they will sponsor you to be in the apprenticeship program, and you will essentially work. That's your schooling, is working, and then in our case, and right here in Los Angeles, the apprenticeship program was you leave twice a semester for 6 weeks, or no, for a week at a time, and then you would take some classes at school and then come back to work. So it's not difficult at all. It's every 6 months, essentially, you get a pay upgrade until you become a journeyman. So it usually takes about 4 years.
That's great. And what about one of the questions from the students is, what turned you on to woodworking?
I don't know what turned me on to woodworking. Ever since I was a little tyke, I was always getting into trouble with my dad because I would take his tools. So I have always been mechanically inclined. When I started wrenching on cars, I didn't like the fact that I got grease under my fingernails. So I said, I think I'm just going to stick to woodworking. I could just blow that off. And Um, and I mean, even when I work on projects, I try to look for the difficult projects, what is more technical, because that's what I really excel at. Um, Simple woodworking, just making boxes, it just doesn't intrigue me at all. I really like the complex projects, and that's one of the things that architectural woodworking is known for here, where we take on very intricate projects, and I'm very involved in the process of making stone parts, metal parts, glass parts, you name it. Even though I don't manufacture that portion of it, I bring everything together here and I make it happen. Um, so woodworking to me has come almost naturally, and I enjoy it. I've been doing it for, I did it 4 years in high school, 2 years in college, and 26 years here. So it's been a while.
Well, that's great. It looks like Whitney joined us. Whitney, would you go ahead and introduce yourself and say where you work and what you do?
Sure. Hi, I'm Whitney Pyle. I am the Vice President and co-owner at J.G. Bowers Incorporated and Advanced Cabinet Systems in Marion, Indiana.
Nice.
Great. So one of the questions that we had from some of the students was, what turned you on to woodworking? How did you get into this career?
I have to be really honest. It's not a glamorous story at all. I spent about 13 years in regulated environments. So I worked for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for about 5 years, and then I worked for the FDA for about 7 years. And getting into woodworking, it was a family business. And my brother graduated from college. He's 10 years younger than I am. It was always his dream to work in the family business. And so he hired in back in 2008. And he said, wow, this is really overwhelming. It's a lot going on. I don't have a ton of business experience. Obviously, that time he really had none. So he said, can you come work with me? And I sort of laughed him out of the house. But about 6 or 7 months later, we talked several more times and decided that it would really be a good fit. And I think our first year that we worked together, we grew our revenue by 5 times. So it was really exciting first couple of years in the business. And then we have since obviously bought the business. Our parents are both retired, and it's been a lot of fun.
Great. And what advice, I asked this to Saul as well. So what advice would you give to students looking to break into this career? And do you guys offer internships and apprenticeships? And how would students go to explore that?
So we have so many different careers available in, our business. It's, if you think about just all the different aspects of business, I mean, we have careers in engineering, we have careers in production, careers in finance and accounting. There's so many different things that you can do and work in this business and in this industry. So really, first, I would encourage them to, think about what their passion is and how that can really be utilized in any industry. We do have internships. We work with local universities. Typically, those internships are in engineering. Those are hard positions to fill. They're coveted. The employees that have those skills are very coveted. So that's what I would say is look at all of the different options, see what you're really passionate about. And then we do internships. We also have a program that's called My Shop, where we bring in local high schoolers and show them what our business is like. They work here for a day, learning kind of how to use a tape measure, learning some of our heavy equipment, just understanding how it operates. We use a lot of CNC equipment. So, and then before they leave for the end of the day, we let them kind of build a little trinket they can take with them. And that's been a really popular program. And it's so funny, the number of high school students that come into me and say, man, I never knew about anything like this. So just, I think that exposure and the outreach is so great, just to be able to bring new ideas to students. I grew up in kind of rural Kentucky, and all the girls that I went to high school with, our career paths were nurses or teachers. We had a very limited view of the world. And just now knowing, being out in the world for many years, more than I would like to admit, that there's just so much available. And so I'd really encourage students to look at all their local businesses, and people look at it and say, oh, they're a cabinet company, they make cabinets. But not every single person who works here makes cabinets. There's so many different career options just within one business. So, yeah, I hope I answered that question. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had one other school that joined us. So I'm just going to get a little broadcast out to the teacher. So if your students have any questions, feel free to type it into the chat box and I will answer it, of Sal and Whitney. So Sal, I'll go back to you. So one of the questions from the students is it better to go to college for woodworking, or should they go into it right after high school?
I think, to me, I think education is important. So it would be a good idea to go to college. It doesn't have to be a 4-year college. It could be a 2-year. I mean, 4 years are pretty expensive. Right after I graduated high school, I went to LA Trade Tech here in Los Angeles. I did basically 4 semesters there, and that gave me my certificate of completion for cabinet making millwork. The important thing is that you get involved and you do woodworking, because if you don't use it, you lose it. And it's not always the case, but if you could get onto a shop, and make sure you go to school, whether you go to night school. I mean, it pays dividends in the long run if you sacrifice a little bit now. So I highly recommend that you do go to college. It'll pay off.
Right. And for apprenticeships, they have what they call earn while you learn, right? Where students could also do apprenticeships after high school and then also start taking college credits, correct?
That's correct. So here, last I heard through the local 721, if you were an apprentice, you can you earn credits from the local college that they are related to. And then if you are taking additional courses, you can get your Associates of Science, I believe, by doing both, working as an apprentice and going to school in the evening, so you can get your AS or AA. So yeah,
Great.
You can do that in 2 years.
And Whitney, I'll ask you that question too. So, for students, they want to know, should they go to college or try to go into the career right after high school? And I know that you mentioned engineering. So, what do you guys look for when you're hiring, or what advice would you give to students about that?
I have to agree with Saul. The education piece is so important in our society today. I think it's key that people continue their education, but also, to Saul's point, the earn while you learn is an excellent idea. It's difficult for me to admit, but in high school, I was kind of a C student. I wanted to do things. I didn't want to sit and write papers, and there were classes that I just hated, that I felt like were a waste of my time. And going back to school later and earning a degree, I realized how I wish that I would have buckled down and taken it more seriously when I was younger, because it's much harder when you are older, especially if you end up having children and married and all those things. So we, here in our facility, we employ the gamut. We have people who are fresh out of high school or only have a GED with, a 10th grade education, all the way to master's degrees. People want to pursue their PhDs. So if someone feels like they're one of those students that is just ready to work, or they have a life circumstance that they feel like they're not going to be able to afford college, I think there are so many companies like ours that have opportunities available for those students. And myself as an employer, I encourage all those young people who come in who are working in production or working in some entry-level positions, let's really work and see what we can do here to get you into school. And then we also help to pay for that. So it's definitely, there's so much opportunity. If you come from a family that can afford to send you to college and you're not going to accumulate a ton of debt and school is your thing, then go for it. Those jobs are going to be there when you graduate. But if you have a different life circumstance, it's so worth pursuing those opportunities where you can go into a business and somebody will help you fund your education and you can grow with that company and stay long term and learn new skills. There's a lot of opportunity available, and I totally agree with Saul that education is so important, but I think it's looked at a little bit differently today than it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago even. Why accumulate the level of debt that a lot of college seniors graduate with when there's a lot of companies who are willing to say, hey, let me help you with that and we'll work through it while you're going. So I think there's a lot of both out there.
Sure. And I'll go back to Saul. So the next question is from students saying, our teacher was talking about soft skills last week. What kind of soft skills do you look for? And what does soft skills even mean?
Well, I mean, I hear that a lot, but I don't know how to put it. But what I'm looking for is, I don't know if you guys know, but I'm Mexican and I like to work hard. I'm a go kind of guy, and that's what I think most companies are looking for: somebody who's dedicated and wants to do the project or get the job done. And in my case, I just try to satisfy my boss and make sure that he's happy. If he's happy, we're all happy. When it comes to soft skills, I guess it's just coming in and waking up early in the morning, showing up to work, just doing your due diligence, I guess, or just making sure everything's taken care of. I don't know. That's what I got.
And Whitney, what do you look for? Or, how would you describe soft skills to students?
I would say the number one way I describe soft skills is be coachable. You have to know that when you come fresh out of high school or even fresh out of college, there are people who have been here for decades, and not to discount that level of expertise simply developed from years of experience in life. I was lucky enough to have several years of experience before I came to work. My brother was not. He came fresh out of college. Literally, the day he graduated, he landed here, and he was excited and he wanted to try all these new things, and he was gung ho, and all of those things are great. But a lot of the time, you would get shot down because somebody with 20 or 30 years of experience here are saying, "Oh, we've already tried that, and that doesn't work because of this or that." And sometimes, when you're really excited and you're fresh into a new career, that's very hard to hear, and it's disheartening. So learning that skill of listening to that feedback and understanding that somebody has come before you and they have this experience, just to be coachable from that. That's so important.
That's a good point. And I think too, students might want to know, how do they present themselves as coachable? And maybe you guys could touch on too, the importance of having jobs while in high school that maybe don't relate to the field, but what is, when you're looking at a student's resume, right? What are you looking for to hire that, that intern or that apprentice? What should students be highlighting? I'll go to Saul first to show that, that you would want to hire them.
Well, when I look at job applications, I always look at if they do any extracurricular activities, if they're involved with sports. That gives me an indication that they can work with other people, so they're team players. I make sure I look for any open cells. Sometimes the students or the applicants, they just quickly fill out the application, poor penmanship, so if you take the time and write it legibly so that I know what it is that you're trying to tell me, it makes a difference for me. So these are just little minor impressions I get from just the application alone as to how they go about writing it up, whether they skip a cell. I mean, I'd rather see an NA or just a line across there, you know, indicating I went through the question, I don't have anything for you. Boom, there you go. And if they work on any equipment, if they're bilingual, trilingual, I don't care. I mean, I've hired so many different people here. It's amazing. And matter of fact, I hired a guy that his application was awesome. His resume was great. I had my gal upstairs call him for an interview, and then when he came in, they told me, "Hey, by the way, he's deaf." I don't care. He knows what he's doing. I'm going to hire him. And I learned sign language. Just, you know, and most of the guys, I told my guys on the floor, you guys need to learn to communicate with him, you know, because he's got skills. And they did. And so you have to be open-minded to everything and take your time while filling out the application.
So you mentioned filling out the application, but when the student said, our teacher has had us create an online portfolio that shows the work we have completed in class, would that help them get the job, or is there a place to link to that?
Yeah, so in my case, I'm old school. So if you could bring in, you know, your photos, even if it's on your phone, I just want to see them. I'm not going to go on a computer while I have you sitting in a room and go and look at a link or something. You know, it's like, no, I'm here now. Let's go. So if they bring anything in to show what they've done, and more often than not, I look at their eyes to see what they're telling me and how passionate they are about it. So whether they bring photos or not, you know, as long as they're explaining to me what it is that they've done and the machinery and the process, I'll know, okay, this kid does know what he's doing. And immediately I can tell, okay, this guy hasn't been on a table. It's like, okay, oops, bless you.
And Whitney, what about you? You know, are you looking at online portfolios, or, you know, what are you kind of looking, you know, what would make a high school student stand out maybe to land that first apprenticeship or internship?
Sure. I do look at online portfolios, especially for my drafters, and we do hire drafters straight out of high school. Actually, that's two of the local schools, high schools in my county offer CAD program, and they offer 4 years of CAD. If you've taken 4 years of CAD drafting in high school, you can work in our engineering department here. And many of those students come in with a full portfolio. I do take the time, if I've gotten a resume ahead of time with a link in it, to look at those. I think that's key to me actually knowing. And then we also do a CAD assessment with anyone who would come in to work in our drafting or engineering departments. Then also another area of our company where I would look at portfolio work is in our custom department. So we are Division 6 and 12 casework manufacturers. So we build boxes all day. But when we bid those projects, there's typically a percentage of it that is custom mill work. So reception desk, nurses stations, things like that. And so to do that custom work, it requires a very high skill set. I have actually had a student come in before who was a college student, but was raised and brought up overseas and worked with his grandfather and his father his whole life doing custom woodworking things. He did not understand the empirical system of measurement, which was difficult. He was a metric system user, so teaching him that conversion skill took some time. I was a math and physics major, and I love science. So if I had my way, we'd all be on the metric system. That's a whole other story. And all of our equipment is German, so it's all in metrics. So there's a lot of converting. But that is another spot that I really look at that work. I mean, you wouldn't think that a kid who's, 20 years old, only been out of high school for 2 years, would have a high skill set in woodworking. But then take a person who has been doing it in their grandpa's garage since they were 7, and wow, I mean, there's some skill there. And so I never discount anybody based on their age. I've learned over the 20 some years of my career that if somebody who is 19 years old could come in here and have a very high skill set, and they've been, exposed to woodworking multiple times in their life, and could learn finishing, could learn sanding, all of these things. And, we also a conversion of skills. There was a person who came in here and he said, listen, I don't know anything about staining or finishing, but I've been painting cars for 6 years and I can transfer that skill, I think. And yes, he was right. It was a very transferable skill. So things like that. If you've worked on your family's farm, we're in the middle of cornfields in Indiana. And if you are a farm kid, put that on your resume, because I'm going to hire a farm kid 9 out of 10 times. We have a farm, and I've been farming for years, and that's hard work. If you can farm, you can build cabinets. It's so just things like that. To definitely highlight those skills. Even if you think it might not be a transferable skill, that make sure those are on a resume. I hired a kid one time, fresh out of high school, who brought me a paragraph. That was his resume. Never had a job before, never had any coaching or training. He is still here today. I think he just turned 23, so it's been close 5 years, and he is one of the best go-getters I've got. He's very, very coachable, very smart, very hardworking, very dedicated. And he came here and got hired with a paragraph. So it's not always just those things are important, but the most important thing is if you get an opportunity to interview with somebody or talk to somebody, that you put your best foot forward. You understand the importance of being a hard worker and showing up and being dedicated and having a great attitude.
Great. So I know that some of the classes are ending in about 5 minutes, but we do have one more question. So I wanted to wrap up, and I wanted to pose this to both of you because it comes from the students. And it said, should a student look for a mentor to help them learn the ropes? Sal, do you want to take this one first about a mentor?
Sure. I believe in the mentoring system. I think everybody, as even now, I always talk to my father-in-law because he's got some good stories. So, if you're in high school and you know somebody who's out doing woodworking, you should definitely ask them and not just one.
What if you don't know someone? How would a student find a mentor? If a high school student reaches out to you to do like a job shadow or wants to talk to you, is that something you're open to?
Well, yeah, I am. Like in my case, I was raised in East LA by a widowed mother. My mentor was Norm Abrams. So I literally grew up watching my second dad in this old house. Every Saturday I'd be watching him because I wanted to learn more from him. And just a little bit that he explained and showed made a difference for me. But if you know somebody, or if somebody's local in LA, they want to come and visit me, absolutely. I love sharing information. I'm not one of those journeymen that, oh no, it's my secret, I'm not going to show you how it's done. No, I don't mind sharing because it makes my life easier. Hand off the task to the next guy. Sorry, here you go.
And then Whitney, what would you say about student, looking for a mentor? What advice would you give students to help find a mentor, and what should they look for in a mentor?
I think the number one thing to look for in a mentor is somebody that you immediately have a good, safe connection with, and that believes in you. I struggled with that when I was a kid. I did. And I had a couple teachers who really said, I know that maybe school's not your thing and you're not loving it, but you're good at this and you're good at that. And I think you can find a mentor in a lot of places. It doesn't have to be somebody who is directly involved in the career that you want to take, the career path you want to take. You can find a coach, you can find a teacher, you can find, a lot of different people that you have a connection with, that is a good person, invested in your interests and in your best interests, and wants to see you succeed. And you've got to be willing to open yourself up to criticism. I think I was closed off for a really long time when I was younger, and it was a disservice to myself getting that, emotional intelligence, growing up a little bit, understanding that there are people who really do know better, and they're cheering for you and they want you to do well. The Boys and Girls Clubs of America is a huge outreach organization that works with younger kids who need mentors. There are people in my community that are on the boards there that can be reached out to at any time to team up with kids that are at risk but might have a career path interest that's similar, things like that. I do think there's a lot of those programs out there. The main thing is when you're looking for somebody, you look for somebody that you've got a connection with and they believe in you. Because if you don't have that coming from another source, you need it in your life.
Well, great. I wanted to thank you both today so much for your time. So I know this is really, I think, helpful for the students, getting them to know what they should be doing to take the next steps in their, in their career and their journey. So thank you guys so much for your time, and have a great rest of your week.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you guys. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.